name is Gabby Marabito, and I'm the Community Development Coordinator at Zeitgeist. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation about reimagining elder community accessibility with experts from Dementia Friendly Duluth, the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging, St. Luke's Driver Rehabilitation Program, and Duluth Transit Authority. This event is part of Zeitgeist's annual Bus Bike Walk Month. So I just want to send a quick thank you to all of our sponsors. So EHR Go, likewise, MPECU, CF Design, Essentia, St. Luke's, the DTA, Maurice's, Cirrus Aircraft, the Jamar Company, and SHIP, Healthy Northland, and St. Louis County, who have helped to make this event possible. We start all of our events with the acknowledgement that Zeitgeist and the Twin Ports are built on land that was originally Anishinaabe King and home to the Anishinaabe and Dakota people, the original stewards of this territory. This land was ceded by the Anishinaabe in the 1842 and 1854 treaties, and historically and today, it holds great significance for Indigenous people. We are committed to uplifting the name of these lands and community members from these nations who reside alongside us. This acknowledgement sets us up for today's discussion about how we can mindfully create communities and systems that support citizens at all stages of life and are welcoming, safe, and accessible for all, which is at the core of Bus Bike Walk Month events. I'd encourage you to check out the full list of upcoming Bus Bike Walk activities on our webpage, and also a big thank you to everybody, our active transportation committee, the volunteers, and everybody who's helped out to make these events possible. So it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters, Shar Johnson and Ann Forrest Clark, with Dementia Friendly Duluth and the St. Luke's Driver Rehabilitation Program, Gavin with the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging, and David with the DTA. Please feel free to use the chat to enter any questions you have during the presentation, and I now turn it over to you all.
Hi, everybody. Welcome for this afternoon's presentation. Thank you so much, Gabby. My name is Shar Johnson, and I'm the director for Duluth, Dementia Friendly Duluth. I do apologize, my internet is a bit unstable, so I'm hoping that keeping my video off will help that a little bit. But I have the pleasure today of co-hosting today with Gavin Bukovich from the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging, or Quad A as we like to call him. He's an elder care development admin coordinator with a special interest in transportation. And Ann Forrest Clark, an occupational therapist from St. Luke's. She's a certified driving rehab specialist for over 38 years and the owner-operator of Safer Driver. She specializes in older drivers with cognitive and visual skill challenges. Andrea Krause, of course, is our sponsor from Zeitgeist, Community Development Manager. She's involved in a lot of projects supporting active transportation, health equity, and community planning. And we are very pleased to have David Clark, the Director of Marketing from the Duluth Transit Authority, join us today. He's been there for almost 3 years, and he's working on creating and implementing programs that enhance and value and deliver greater services to the Twin Ports area. May I have the next slide, please? Okay, so today we'll be making a worldwide tour of innovative transportation models in the United States and abroad. We'll start by examining really the purpose and need for our invisible population, people with hidden disabilities. What we'll be discovering and discussing is that invisible population and the challenges which are specific to them. And after we get our worldwide travel, we'll get really close to home and hear a bit from David Clark, and he'll share the future of Duluth transportation. If we can get into slide 3, please, the next slide. So Dementia Friendly Duluth, just a bit of background on us, is a collaborative or a think tank of professionals and community members who look at and develop programs to enhance the lives of people who are living with dementia. Dementia Friendly Duluth itself grew from the Act on Alzheimer's, a 2009 initiative in Minnesota. And by 2015, it was 35 national organizations which launched Dementia Friendly America. In 2016, the initiative did come here to Duluth. If we go on to the next slide. The collaborative has subcommittees. So while the bigger collaborative is the think tank, the subcommittees are doing the work, and the transportation committee is the group that you're hearing from today. So the transportation committee is working on efforts to improve community mobility for people living with dementia. And with that, I will give the platform over to Ann Clark, who will share more on why we as a community need to be concerned with this matter. So Ann, over to you.
Next slide, please. First thing we need to discuss is, why is transportation a concern for people with dementia? Next slide, please. The biggest issue is the growing demographics around dementia. Currently, we have about 6 million people in the United States, or greater than 6 million people in the United States living with dementia, and the number is exponentially increasing. By 2050, it's predicted we'll have over 13 million people with dementia. What's also important to know is that of that number of people that have dementia, over 70% of them are living in communities, not in facilities, and 25% of those individuals are living alone in their own homes. Next slide. I found some interesting maps describing what's coming for us. In 2015, it looks like there are a lot of counties within our state that are in the 21 to 27% concentration of people over the age of 65. Jump ahead, one more slide. To jump ahead to 2020, St. Louis County is still in that demographic. And go ahead, you can go to the next one. And in 2030, only the Twin Cities and a couple outliers, Clay and Blue Earth, are in the 21 to 20%. St. Louis jumps up to 28 to 34%. The demographics tell us that we are getting older. The higher concentration of people up north here is significantly higher for folks with dementia. Let's take this a little bit closer to home and look at our Duluth demographics. In 2019, our population was about 86,000. Of those, about 13,000 of those folks were over the age of 65. And it's estimated that 10.7% of those 13,000 people have dementia. So that means roughly 1,400 people in Duluth are living with dementia. And as I said on a previous slide, 70% of those are living in their own homes and will be facing the need for support with transportation. Next slide. And why that is because dementia magnifies the effects of normal aging. It especially affects our ability to cognitively process information quickly. It reduces our peripheral visual field awareness. It affects our ability to focus our vision and pay attention to visual targets. It also significantly reduces our ability to scan quickly a visual field to identify, is the light turning red, turning green? What about the deer running across the road or the car stopping in front of us? And it dramatically reduces our reaction time, because if we're having difficulty taking in visual information, it makes it that much harder for us to be able to make the right maneuver with our foot moving from the gas to the brake. So dementia magnifies the issues of normal aging. Next slide. So the transportation needs of our elder adults also change as we age, and especially as dementia becomes part of the mix. Ideally, what elders are telling us and I'm speaking as if I'm not an elder, but I'm 62 years old, so I'm very close to this group. That people want to be able to access to transportation on demand, not on a scheduled basis, but when they need it. They would also like door-through-door service rather than curb-to-curb service. And that means someone that picks them up right at their front door and brings them to the front door of where they need to go, maybe the even specific office. They'd like to be not required to follow a fixed route. They'd like to be able to access the transportation by phone, because computers just aren't part of a comfort level for many elder adults. They'd also like it to be reasonably priced and to have it be easily accessible. As we get older, it's harder for us to climb up into bigger buses or into bigger vehicles, and to get up from lower vehicles. Next slide, please. So the unique transportation needs of people with dementia are that people need cognitive support, meaning help planning and tracking when they're ordering transportation. They may be able to call for a ride, but to keep track of that ride and remember that it's been ordered, and be able to recognize when they are getting to the location that they need to be dropped off or picked up. Also help finding their way to their destination and handling payment. Currently, a lot of our transportation options require that we have online accounts and are able to easily access those via our smartphones or our computers. And that's not just an option for many seniors. And also being able to help problem solve what to do if a change in the transportation situation occurs. A driver is ill, the route has been changed, how do they get to their destination, etc. Next slide, please. People with dementia also will experience physical changes, such as reduction in their ability to balance in moving environments, being able to get up and down from stairs that maybe are on a bus that is kneeling. Being able to coordinate hands and feet can become more difficult. Also, having a visual awareness of the traffic around them and the people, and being able to identify the signage that indicates when they are at their destination. And also to be able to see adequately in low-level light areas. I'm looking out my window today and it's very, very gray. And if you have poor contrast sensitivity, it's going to be very hard for you to read signs or be able to process visual information in your environment. It looks like Shar is back, so I'm going to turn this back over to Shar.
Oh, that is the wonders of technology. I was kind of afraid that that was going to happen. So I am signed in now on my phone as well. So you'll see two little Charlene Johnsons up there, but there's really only one. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, I didn't know I was doing this slide, Ann.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize there was another one. Sorry. Okay, transit dependent.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought you were there. I wasn't counting my slides right. So it's very important when we're considering transit dependency that's a key issue for people being able to stay in their own environment, stay safe in their home, that they have a way to access their community, especially something that allows people to access their community in ways other than driving their own personal vehicle. Because as I said earlier, dementia magnifies the normal changes of aging. And when those changes become to such a level that they're no longer able to drive a car, it's really hard for people with dementia to identify alternatives. And it's also very important to work with caregivers and make sure that they're aware of transportation services that are out there being able to offer them to the individuals that they're working with. The number one reason that people contact the National Elder Care Locator for information is because of issues with transportation. And I bet our own senior linkage line folks would echo that as well. Next slide, please. So transit dependency, it really is about accessing mobility, accessing the community for healthcare, to purchase groceries, to bring a pet to the vet if needed, being able to access banking, being able to stay in contact with family and friends. The biggest issue that people face when they need to retire from driving is social isolation and depression. They're not able to get out and do the things that they used to be able to do, and they are struggling to maintain that level of social contact and cognitive activity. When you isolate, you're losing a lot of cognitive stimulation, and that's exactly what a person with dementia doesn't need. Next slide, please.
Oh, there I am.
Yep.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate all the information that you have passed on. And it was a great segue into talking about what a dementia-friendly community actually is. So the definition, I've got a couple of different ones. The first one is a dementia-friendly community is a place or culture in which people with dementia and their carers are empowered and supported. And I like to really use the term that I got from my friend Beth, I think I mentioned before, dementia immersive. So we're not really just being friendly, but we're actually engaging people who are living with dementia as members of the community, seeing the person, not the challenge. So teaching and enabling a community to work with people living with dementia is kind of the goal of that dementia-friendly community. If we go into the next slide, please. So we want to create a place where people are no longer invisible or discounted because they have changed. And so an immersive community really embraces those 8 domains of livability as defined by the World Health Organization and AARP. And just the basics of that are the domains embrace the idea of affordability, accessibility, and the ability to thrive within a community for all citizens. And to get back to something that Anne has mentioned throughout her slides, is that transportation really is of paramount importance to keeping people living with dementia active, vibrant members of their community. If they can't get to social events, if they can't get to healthcare, if they can't get to the grocery store or get pet care, they've really become isolated, and that just accelerates the rate that people decline when they're living with dementia. So next slide, please. I'm going to introduce you to just 2 different communities across the pond, as it were, that have really taken the idea of dementia friendly to the next level. And Gabby is going to be putting a link to a really cute little story, about 2.5 minutes long. It's a video. Watch it when you have time to do so. Just about Bruges, Belgium. So Bruges, Belgium is an absolutely gorgeous place. It's known for its cobblestone sidewalks and its delicious chocolate. But Bruges has a population of about 116,000 people, 2,000 of which are actually living with dementia. They recognized early on that changes in their community would be necessary in order for those people to actually be living there. So the community banded together to increase their own awareness and understanding of dementia so that they could enhance the quality of life. They recognize that the importance of a successful and safe transportation system. How else would people engage in the things that made them a part of the community? Social events, grocery shopping, etc., as we've mentioned before. They wanted them to be successful. So they actually, as a community, banded together and said, okay, what is it like for me as a person living with dementia? If I have dementia, what is it like for me to traverse this city? So they did training for public transportation drivers. They trained them in how to communicate effectively, what the environment might need to look like, what changes within the community would have to happen in order for them to actually be a dementia-friendly city. The National Aging and Disability Center, NADTC, recommends that caregivers explore all transportation possibilities when they learn that their person may be living with dementia. Get to know drivers, get to understand, have them understand the process of dementia, what they maybe would need to change in their interactions. They also encourage having a go bag for people when they're traveling, if they're living with dementia, with clear identification packed away, emergency numbers, extra clothes, travel buddies, which I know Gavin will be discussing in a later slide. All of these things, those travel trainings, those things that we can do to help people be more independent, make a huge difference in the quality of life for people living with dementia. And it's not a forever fix. Dementia is a progressive neurological disease. There will come a point where they're going to need additional help. But if we can keep them independent for longer, that really is the goal. Next slide, please. My next city is in the Netherlands, and the Netherlands has a population of about 17.2 million people. 260,000 is the estimate of people living with dementia. The citizens there decided that they needed to take a very close look at their community, and so they actually did a photo tour. They looked at all the spaces within their community, looking for good spaces and bad spaces. And then as a community, they got together, they decided what they were going to do with it. If it didn't work, they modified it, replaced it, accommodated. They did the best that they could to make sure that people who are living with dementia were a part of their community, and that they actually recognize the importance of this phenomenon that we have, this purple tsunami coming, that they actually have a 10-year plan. Gabby just posted the link to that if you're interested in reading it. You don't have to read necessarily the whole thing, obviously, but you can get the gist of it. There are 3 keys in there. Are people living with dementia matter, and that means that they want to reduce the stigma. They want to embrace people and make them, again, a viable part of that community and not be invisible. They envision a world without dementia, and that is accomplished through research and development. And when people are living with dementia, they want them to have a tailor-made program so that everybody is treated as an individual and everyone's needs are properly accommodated. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So creating a dementia-friendly community is ongoing. As I mentioned at the beginning, 2016 is when Dementia Friendly Duluth was launched. We are, 7 years into it. COVID kind of put a little stopper in some of the stuff, but at this point, Duluth is an evolving city. We want to be that. We want to be a great city, and we want to be an inclusive city. So are we ready for the next steps to actually embrace a dementia immersive city? Are we ready as a community to make the changes that we need? And transportation is an absolute pivotal aspect of a dementia immersive community. So let's get into the next slide, please. Okay. So themes that are common to dementia-friendly cities, they have large awareness campaigns, a critical evaluation of the city, such as what was done in the Netherlands, and working groups like what we have in Dementia Friendly Duluth, like Zeitgeist does, like many other organizations do, like the DTA as well, to figure out how do we make it better for people. So being more dementia friendly means that we're, embracing those transportation innovation ideas, volunteerism, flexibility, and modification. And I'm very happy that we have the partners that we do in Quad A, AWA, DTA, and all the subdivisions to explore those opportunities. So with that, I would like to introduce Gavin Vukovic now from Quad A to talk about those innovations in other cities across the United States that have been implemented and maybe things that we can look at for here. Thank you, and on to you, Gavin.
Thank you, Shar. Actually, I thought I deleted this slide. You can pass over the slide, please, Gabby. Great. Yeah, I will be talking about a little bit more localized dementia-friendly transportation, but I'd kind of like to start with the question of kind of reframing how an operator or a fellow rider may view another transit rider with dementia. Everyone's familiar with a wheelchair ramp, how it helps individuals with physical limitations to board a vehicle. And obviously they'll probably need assistance from the vehicle operator or maybe even fellow passengers. But kind of like to ask the question of what a cognitive ramp would look like per se. The ramp that someone with invisible disabilities may need for their operator or for the vehicle operator or their fellow passengers to help them out. Next slide, please. Okay. And continue on the dementia-friendly transportation, I will be discussing some nationwide best practices for public transit rides with dementia, and just a compilation of agencies that exhibit successful transportation programs for elder citizens with dementia or other invisible disabilities. Next slide. Some components of a dementia-friendly transportation program include travel training and a bus buddy program, a door-through-door volunteer-assisted program, and operator training in the context of transportation and dementia, which I will touch upon in the next few slides here. Next slide. So here I'll discuss travel training and bus buddy programs. So it's basically just teaching new riders the skills they need to use public transit systems. For myself, quick example, I was very nervous the first time I ever had to ride the public bus here in Duluth. And these are just supports that have a more experienced rider to just kind of educate a new rider on what they need to do to have a safe and successful travel on public transit, such as reading route maps and schedules, how to locate bus or train stops, how to calculate and pay their fares, and how to recognize when they have reached their desired stop, and how to safely notify the vehicle operator, such as pulling the little string on the bus or whatnot. Next slide, please. So an agency that I found was a great example of travel training is in the Intercity Transit in Olympia, Washington is just a great example of the travel training and bus buddy program. They have a really extensive website and agency, so I can find too many exact statistics, but it's just worth a check out here. Next slide, please. And I know Ann Clark discussed in her slides what a door-through-door program is compared to a door-to-door, but door-to-door is simply providing a ride to a destination. You hop in the vehicle and you get back out, while door-through-door is much, much more comprehensive. The rider is personally assisted from their home to their vehicle, and then when they are in their vehicle, they are seated and secured. And then when they reach their destination, instead of just being dropped off, they're assisted through the door to maybe an office space or a caseworker or whatever individual will be there to assist the individual with dementia. Next slide, please. And this is an organization that has a really great door-through-door program and volunteer-assisted transportation program. The entire county, Knox County, Tennessee, they run a nonprofit volunteer program that provides accessible and affordable door-through-door transportation services to older adults and persons with disabilities. They have their own agency-owned hybrid sedans and wheelchair-accessible minivans, which are really great if an agency has the funding to afford these vehicles. And they train their volunteer drivers to provide non-medical rides, door-through-door transportation to those who need help. Next slide, please. And this is just the volunteer assisted transportation program continued. They provide volunteer assisted at any time to a volunteer, and vehicles are available to meet a specific request, such as wheelchair accessible and whatnot. And just reiterate again that they own 10 agency owned hybrid sedans and 7 wheelchair accessible minivans. And next slide, please. So here I'll talk a little bit more about operator training in the context of transportation and dementia. Of course, operator training can mean anything really, and just in this context, it's having drivers kind of understanding the physical, visual, and cognitive changes that dementia may bring, which I know Anne discussed in her slides earlier, and how you can give clear, concise, and simple directions to someone who is struggling with dementia. And even just responding to questions, even asked more than once. I know some people may feel annoyed or a little bit irked at someone who's constantly asking the same question over and over. But and if you can go to the next slide, please, Gabby. It's just great to, in all contexts, is just treating individuals with respect, giving tactile cues to compensate for loss of visual awareness, and reminding passengers of their destinations, being patient above all else, and treating people with respect. Next slide, please. And here's an example from actually pretty close to home here in Rock County, Wisconsin. Local Dementia Coalition has provided the training to transit staff and volunteers, how to detect signs and symptoms of dementia, how to maybe approach and interact with an individual with dementia, how to maintain a dementia-friendly environment, and they have earned a dementia-friendly certification. And next slide here. And just another example of an agency that has excelled in operator training for transportation and dementia is the U.S. is actually first dementia-friendly designated airport, and they have trained first responder dementia-friendly training to their airport police officers. And next slide, I believe I will be handing this off to Dave Clark, Director of Marketing for the Duluth Transit Authority.
Yes, thanks, Kevin, and also to Anne and Shar and Andrea and everybody that helped create this presentation. It's been certainly an illuminating process to learn more about the needs and opportunities around serving adults with invisible disabilities and other challenges. With me today as well, especially in case there's questions around the concept, is Sarah Powers, who leads our Stride paratransit group here at the DTA. So I'd like to thank her for joining as well. So to kick this off, everybody probably has at least a basic understanding of what the DTA is, but folks facing disabilities and also those who aren't have the flexibility to use the system. Those who are registered and qualified for Stride can use paratransit, and some folks also take the hybrid approach, whether seasonally or under specific circumstances, using Stride and then also using our mainline fixed route bus service as well. So when we talk about resources that are in place in the context of those riding with disabilities, we have known and recurring stops on our fixed route schedule that enable a pattern of activities so folks can familiarize themselves with the system. Whereas with paratransit, we have curb-to-curb service. The door-to-door versus curb-to-curb was touched on earlier, but that is available in the demand response format with Stride paratransit. And then additionally, PCAs and other folks who are riding with individuals on Stride are available to ride free of fares as well. So you can move to the next slide, Gabby. And then in terms of amenities regarding safety and security, to create a sense of comfort and break down any barriers, we have cameras with audio and video capabilities across our entire fleet, in our facilities and essentially in all the infrastructure that we own that capture any activities or accidents or incidents and things like that. So we are able to create an environment of the perception of security and accountability as well. We also have some team members at our transit center and at our operations center here who focus on both assisting with customer service and trip planning, and then along with security personnel at our downtown transit center facility. We also have a professional workforce with our operators both on the Stride paratransit fleet and our fixed route fleet that have extensive resources and training with respect to passengers who might have accommodations that are necessary to make travel possible. Move to the next slide, please. So technology. So what we already have in place in terms of making trip planning and ticket purchasing and the general experience more accessible and simple. We have audible onboard stop announcements that give placemaking cues so folks are able to acclimate themselves to where they are. We have landmark and wayfinding signage, both electronic and static, along our system, within our facilities, and aboard our buses. With the MyDTA app, we also have mobile trip planning. So whether someone has a device or has the capabilities to use a mobile app, or is with someone who does the MyDTA app and Transit app, make it easier to both pay for and plan routes around the transit system. Those apps were launched about a year ago now, and we've been very, very thrilled with the adoption rate on those apps. When we benchmark it against our plan and our target versus how things are performing, we're seeing anywhere from 10 to 20% of our daily passengers using one or both of these apps in their travel. So we've been happy to see that that tool is being utilized. When we do launch our new system as part of the Better DTA movement, which I'll get to in a minute, there's going to be technology baked into every bus stop sign that allows folks to send a text to a service, which will then tell them the next 3 buses approaching that stop in real time. So they wouldn't have a need to navigate a paper schedule or use a mobile app to quickly, ascertain where the buses are and in respect to their stop. And then additionally, we have a website with rider resources, how-tos and policies and so on, but also a trip planning app, a desktop app that's separate but draws from the same system of record as well. And then of course, customer service leverages technology to identify where buses are, and they're available through via the phone, or if it's more of a less time sensitive request, there's a form on our website that they can be reached at as well. And that's a team that I work with really closely, and they are quite responsive and a great resource for folks who just need general information or specific trip planning details. The next slide, please. So in terms of training, all of our operators are given a whole basket of training modules when they begin working at the DTA. And then, of course, ongoing training as well. Some of the pertinent ones with respect to folks, passengers with disabilities, would be the passenger assistance, maltreatment awareness, and emergency management protocols. And then a group of our team members consisting of leadership from various areas of the organization has received a more comprehensive, advanced, couple-day-long training from the Easter SEALs, which really deals with ADA compliance and adherence and learning about best practices and new policies and emerging trends and so on. Move to the next slide. So as far as what's coming in the future for the DTA, and actually the very near future with respect to a lot of this, is the Better Bus Blueprint is part of a umbrella of projects that we call the Better DTA movement, which is kind of our resume for all of the new technology, all of the new amenities, the new system, routing, upcoming projects, and so on. So the Better Bus Blueprint will be launching in August. We haven't publicly announced a specific day in August, but that's coming shortly. And really, it's a comprehensive system redesign. We took a look at a bunch of data, did a ton of community outreach, worked with a third-party consultant, an expert consultant in this matter, to essentially start from scratch and redesign a system that has a lot of the virtues and guiding principles that we were looking to, based on the feedback that we got from stakeholders that represent communities within our communities. We're really leveraging a lot of technology with this. I already touched on the Where's My Bus sign, but we're also launching a pre-BRT system, which consists of 2 high-speed GO lines that stop at less stops, but they create a lot of efficiencies so that you can get from point A to point B across town very quickly. And then, of course, our local fixed routes that stop at each stop, but do take a bit more time to travel on, will be running underneath those as well. So, yeah, you can move to the next slide, please. So the process kind of looked like this. There's kind of a lot on the screen here, but we started with a study and took a look at what we needed, established some guiding principles and objectives, did a review of the service with the consultant, designed a network, did a bunch of stakeholder engagement, outreach, and surveys based on the initial plan. And then we sort of framed up a final outline and took a look at what the routing and the timetables and time points would be like. And then now we're at the scheduling and implementation and planning phase here to the far right there in the top graphic, and kind of buttoning things up. We're ordering signage and we're putting together the technology package and really excited about it. So how does this all tie into folks facing disabilities? Well, we really wanted to create guiding principles that the community was behind and really engage with all of the stakeholders to make sure that we were really adding and changing the service in a meaningful fashion. So really ones that touch on this issue would be equity, access to opportunity, improved experience, and being attractive to the greatest number of folks. So in doing that, we really, we added more weekend service, increased travel times, improved access, simplified some routes, and then made a more consistent network. So it runs, you know, Saturdays and Sundays have the same service span, you know, same start and end times. Whereas in our current system, Sunday service is really disparate and not quite as meaningful. I touched on the 2 high frequency routes, the green and the blue GO line. One runs parallel to the lake and then the other one heads up towards the mall, connecting some key corridors. We really, I think it's about 35% of our trips saw significant improvements in travel time. There's more reliability and access to more places. About 16,000 more people are being served with meaningful frequent transit than before. And this routing provides access to 14,000 more jobs than we currently were. And also importantly, there's a 40% increase in equity population access to frequent service, which is very meaningful for us with the equity piece that we were aiming for. And we also added 8 miles of high frequency service to the mix. So this is kind of the biggest change our system has had since we switched from horses to engines, and then, you know, eventually from streetcars to buses. So it's really transformative, and it's been one heck of a project. So move to the next slide. So kind of tying all this together. So we've really been looking at, in this project and beyond, engaging with the communities and having a lens about abilities and what that means in terms of being able to access transit. We really feel like we've done a lot to talk to other systems and look at technology in the market to really have contemporary solutions and offer, you know, meaningful amenities that are, in some cases, we're the first system or one of very few systems to offer some of those technology features in a system of this size, such as our mobile trip planning. And another piece that we're going to be adding is called fare capping, where it basically sets it so that you only pay the cost of a day pass in a single day, no matter how many trips you take. And then once you've spent $40, the account will know that you have that credit, and then you get basically the rest of the month for free, like you had bought a pass. So the equity component there is great, because if folks don't have $40 on the first of the month, but they still spend it throughout the month, once they're there, they're done spending money on the bus. And then, as I mentioned before, the Better Bus Blueprint is going to create a lot more opportunity in terms of equity and access and simplicity. It's going to be easier to use. We're going from 34 down to, I think it's going to be 16 routes, still covering the same area, but it's kind of combining and condensing and strategically consolidating. And, you know, just to kind of float this out there, we're always collaborating with community organizations stakeholders, other agencies, and folks who are just open to finding solutions to make transit better and make the community better. So I certainly invite everyone to reach out if you ever have any questions, and if there's ever any ideas that come to mind, based on some of these great concepts that we've seen in other markets and other countries even, and some of the needs and goals and opportunities that have been identified in this presentation. So I appreciate being a part of it, and I learned a lot through this process. So if anybody has any questions for Sarah or myself after we wrap up here, I think there's another slide or two, be happy to take those as well.
I suppose I can speak for this slide. It's just, your typical summarizing, concluding slide. We hope that the biggest takeaway for our audience is simply being aware of the transportation barriers that elder adults and those with cognitive disabilities deal with every day. And just keep in mind the innovations that agencies have utilized to assist elders with invisible disabilities, and just continual awareness of the ways that we can further assist at the intersection of transportation and aging to make this process equitable for everyone. Thank you.
We really appreciate everyone who has joined us today, and hope that you're taking away a few new nuggets of information that you can apply in your life.
We're open for questions at this time. I think it's fine to just verbally unmute and ask questions in person. Don't have to use the chat. Is anybody else awake out there?
Hi. Yes, I don't have any questions, but this is Beverly. I coordinate the Regional Transportation Coordinating Council and work closely with a lot of the folks that presented today. And I just wanted to say thank you for bringing this topic out the way you have. I think you've provided a lot of good information and hit those intended goals of creating a general awareness that leading into our work and into the future that will consider those that have dementia or any other thing related that might impact their functionality, and being able to use a bus and plan with their best interests in mind.
As working with older adults and driving, I am frequently having to recommend driving retirement. And I do that knowing that that puts that individual at a great risk of isolation and depression. And so at the same time that I recommend driving retirement, I try to also provide information regarding all the alternative transportation options, because some people have families that are supportive and are willing to take them places, and other people have no one and they're totally lost. I do want to give a shout out to Agewell Arrowhead. Those are really and Volunteer Services of Carleton County. Those are my go-to folks for people with dementia for rides to non-medical places. It's tough. We really all need to consider the needs of folks that aren't able to use computers, aren't able to use smartphones, and how are we going to keep them safe and connected with our community. It's going to be a bigger problem, as we all see, and I'm really thankful. If you can't do anything else, maybe offer a ride to someone who can't drive. Volunteer to give a ride to someone through Agewell Arrowhead or Volunteer Services of Carleton County. They do provide services to folks living in Duluth, not just Carleton County.
Actually, Ann, I would like to add into that. I've been researching stuff about driving retirement, and just more of a solid number. Most people do outlive their ability to safely drive by about 10 to 15 years. So that kind of puts it in perspective.
Yeah, the demographic or the numbers that we get from AAA are 7 to 9 years. As we age, as we physically age, our brains aren't keeping up with us. Neither is our vision. So, you know, medical advances are great in some respects, but are creating a whole new set of problems for us in other areas.
Thank you
So
guys.
Gavin, your point is well taken. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when someone's going to retire. Almost all of us will have to face driving retirement if we live long enough.
Thank you so much for that. I do have another quick question. Is there anything that Duluth in particular does well in this area, or any very specific things that you see could be improved on either end of being accessible to the elder community or those living with invisible disabilities?
Well, I just a couple seconds ago gave the shout out to Age Well Arrowhead and to Volunteer Services of Carleton County. Those are great organizations helping to serve people that are no longer able to drive but need access to their community. So those are organizations that are doing something well. They were hit very hard by COVID because, you know, folks aren't willing to step up and give rides and people aren't, you know, willing to take rides from strangers, not knowing what the potential for contracting COVID may be. So this has been a rough 2 years. And hopefully we're rebuilding. Although right now, folks, so many people are coming down with COVID. It is still time to be diligent and wear your masks and not gather in crowds. COVID is rampant right now in our community.
I would echo everything that Ann said and Gavin shared, and just in terms of what we can do as a community, get back into that volunteering mode. And you know, Age Well Arrowhead and Carleton County always looking for volunteer drivers. They're always well screened and very helpful. These are people who want to be out there to help, but we need more volunteers, and we all do need to take responsibility for masking up and getting, you know, taking care of ourselves so that we're out there and able to help.
I guess I would just add, and I failed to touch on this on one of the last slides that I shared, but the DTA has a number of resources available. We have of course, the info on our new system that's launching this summer, but then there's also a ticketing and mobile app guide. And then we also have a very powerful how to use the bus guide that was in that picture as well, that Beverly and some other contributors developed. And we've gotten an overwhelmingly great response from that, because it kind of creates the bridge between I've never ridden a bus and I'm comfortable riding a bus. So it goes, really connects that space that exists between that and, you know, picking up a map and understanding the schedule. So that was a great resource, and we're thrilled to have that available as well. And if anybody knows someone who might be able to use any of those guides, our downtown transit center has a supply of them, and I'm available via email or phone if there's a request for any specific quantity of them to use with any organization or community that you that's in your network as well. So just wanted to touch on that.
Dave, are they available online through the DTA website?
The resources are all on our website.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep, but oftentimes it's if there's a community event or a training or something along those lines, it's nice to have something physical to take with you, particularly if you're going to be, you know, perhaps using transit and just want something easy and quick and accessible. So, but yes, they're all available on the website as well.
Thank you.
I just added to the chat the Arrowhead RTCC website. which includes a directory for transit and transportation in the area, as well as other resources, which includes the bus guide, your dementia friendly guide. There's a link to that in there, as well as other resources for those that maybe don't know how to get started on developing a plan for themselves for transportation.
Thank you for sharing that, Beverly.
If there aren't any other questions, I would say thank everybody for attending, and we hope to remain engaged and committed to transportation being available for everyone in our Duluth community and even the greater Arrowhead. Transportation is a huge piece of independence and living successfully. So I think we're done. Would you agree?
It looks like it. Thank you everybody for attending. I'll just say that, so this was recorded. So if anybody is interested in receiving the recording, I will send that out to all participants, including those who are unable to attend, and that should include chat with the links as well. So look out for a post-event email coming with, hopefully I can get the recording to fit well in the email. So look out for that coming soon in the next few days.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye now.